we've been a party of peace for a very long time. It's one of the values that we stood on during wartime. We've been a party against genocide for a very long time. Been excommunicated and sort of attacked for being anti-Semitic. I want to make sure that we have at least 2 spots on our executive board.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. This is Rex Nazarko, and we are back with another segment of the Muslim Take. Today we have a very interesting panel here with us, and we have a very interesting conversation centered around the Michigan Democratic Party convention, which will be taking place this upcoming Saturday, February 22nd. We have one of the main candidates for state chair, Mr. Al Williams, with us today. And we are also joined by Joshua Feinstein and Dr. Nazneen Mahmood, who also is known as Annie in a lot of community circles. Thank you, everybody, for joining. Appreciating you being on here.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Same here.
Likewise. So we are going to jump into this very, very quickly, cold turkey style kind of. So, Al, why don't you kind of run us through briefly about what your vision is for the Michigan Democratic Party, what your vision is to reform the party, especially in light of the blunders of the 2024 election, and how do you plan on engaging with Muslims and other minority communities?
Thank you for that question. I truly appreciate you. It's a great question. My name is Al Williams. I'm a candidate for chair of the Michigan Democratic Party, and my vision of the party is to rebuild it from the bottom up. I'm running because I'm tired of losing. I'm tired of losing locally and statewide. Of course, it's time for us to start winning again, and I know you're ready to start winning again too. But even more importantly than that, I'm tired of seeing our party dying. And I've been a part of the fabric of this party for a long time, helping to organize caucuses from the Bangladeshi caucus to the Jewish caucus to the African American caucus, helping to revive caucuses throughout this party in the state party, whether it was the grassroots caucus or even the senior caucus in a lot of ways, in the Michigan Young Dems, or joining and birthing the youth caucus. I've been a part of the fabric of the Michigan Democratic Party for a long time. So I want to rebuild our party from the bottom up, make it about the little d, not the big D. Make sure that every voice is valued within our party under the big tent. I've always said, and I will continue to say, that although I'm a black man, this is not the black party. This is the Democratic Party. Although we love labor, we advocate for labor, we support labor, we work to empower labor and their members. This is not the Labor Party. It's the Democratic Party. Although we support women and we fight for women's reproductive rights, and we have the trifecta of Governor Whitmer and Dana Nessel and Jocelyn Benson, this is not the Women's Party. It's the Democratic Party. And really, it's the party for all people. It's the party for Arab Americans and Jewish Americans. This is a big tent. And we need to act and be serious about being inclusive of every single voice, or our party will continue to die. As long as we continue to allow labor to run the Democratic Party like it's the Labor Party, or others to run the party and only include one voice and not actually include all voices and advocate for all people, then we'll continue to die. And so, and the reason why I'm running is not just to win again, but to make sure that our party stands for everyone, stands on the values of what this Democratic Party was built for: inclusion, equality, standing up for those voices who go unheard, standing up against hatred, and standing up for democracy, standing up for social justice, and advocating for all those who are advocating for peace as well. That's what the Democratic Party has been about for a long time, and we need to reestablish those values. We're a big tent. We've always been about everybody in and nobody out. We need to get back to being serious about that, those values again.
I want some of the community members, Dr. Nazneen and Joshua, to share their perspectives about the state of the Democratic Party in the aftermath of the 2024 elections, in particular with Michigan, and how this party is going to start representing people again, and in particular the voices of those that it marginalized in this election.
Yeah, I mean, I am a pediatric specialist. I see a lot of young people. I would love to see young people pulled back into this party. There's no future for the party without young people. I see rural people come, patients come. I want to see them served. I want to see them get services like, people with kids with disabilities. They're on wait lists that are four times as long as people in urban communities, and we're not serving our populace. It's not just the Detroiters party, it's everybody's party. It's the Michigan Democratic Party. I agree with you, Al. And I think we need to take a look at a heartfelt look at how we can service the whole community. And Muslims are part of that. For generations now, we've been here. We're heavy contributors to the community, at the blue collar level, white collar level, now in leadership levels too. And we need to be there. So yeah, a lot of what you're saying resonates, and I would expand. I'm just adding to it.
No,
What
she's right. I mean, she's absolutely right. I mean, whether it doesn't matter where you go. Um, whether you're in Dearborn or Duluth, there are communities of color that look like me and represent the Arab American community or the Muslim American community right here in this state. It's not just District 12 or Southeastern Michigan. Those voices spread throughout the state. I mean, there are business owners that contribute to the
That's right.
economy here in the state of Michigan that look like me and you, whose voices need to be heard within the Democratic Party. Small business owners make up a large portion of this party. It's not just about labor, although we love labor, we support them. We
Oh
support
yeah.
working families, but we also need to support the working poor. We also need to support the small business owners in our community. And so, a lot of those individuals end up being Democrats. A lot of those individuals identify as Democrats. And so, I think that we lost last year because we didn't listen to the voices that really make up a large part of the allies, traditional allies of this party. We listened to a few voices, unfortunately,
Mhm.
and we got to get back to making sure that we value every voice,
uh,
um,
Al,
and that's absolutely important.
I think that's a great point, and with in particular to our Muslim community when it comes to the point of representation and inclusion. Uh, Realistically and frankly speaking, a lot of people are very jaded by the experience they have with the Democratic Party following the 2024 election. We felt unheard, we felt sidelined. There was active efforts to replace us as a voting bloc, right? So we felt that this whole idea of, oh, well, you have a seat at the table. Well, in what form? Were we a seat at the table as kids sitting at the adults' table, or were we actually decision makers? So how do you ensure that Muslims under your leadership are going to be decision makers, right? They're going to be represented properly.
Yeah, I'm an African American. The whole idea of symbolism has plagued our community for far too long. My aunt is Brenda Lawrence, and we've had our way with things communicating. She sits on one side, sometimes I sit on the other. But one thing that she has always taught me is you know, when the right voices are at the table, the conversation changes. Period. And if you're really valuing every voice, nobody is a symbol. And so sometimes in the Democratic Party, we give these seats to people to be symbolically diverse, not realistically diverse, because nobody's actually listening to everybody. Or else we would have a working poor caucus, or else we would have a caucus for those returning citizens. We symbolically give positions away all the time within the party. It's happened to us as African Americans for far too long. Our voices are, we don't have a John Lewis Voting Rights Act. It didn't pass. After all of that, all of the fighting for changing democracy, changing the conversation on how we make sure that access to the ballot is important to everybody, the John Lewis Voting Rights Act didn't pass. It was symbolic at best. And so we need to get serious about making sure, and as chair, I'm going to make sure that Muslim Americans' voices are at the table, not just for symbolism purposes, but an actual voice, getting things done and working with us in the community. When it comes to situations like providing high quality education or making sure that we have access to affordable health care or access to health care for all. Or when we're having the conversation about peace, when we're talking about, what's going on in Gaza. Um, every voice needs to be valued when it comes to talking about that conversation. So having a Muslim American voice, a Jewish American voice, an African American voice, voices from working families and the working poor on our slate is absolutely essential, and that's what we have, and that's what we're proud of.
It warms my heart to hear you say this, Al, because in context of when Rex was saying, in context of the recent election in 2024, as a Democrat, um, a lot of us were ready to leave the party for just the reasons that you're talking about what we had become. And so when I hear you say, rather than leaving, let's reclaim the party and be the party that we're supposed to be, that kind of that fires me up because honestly, as a lifelong Democrat, I often have now one foot out the door because we became, I like to actually, my wife coined the phrase, we became Republican light. And why have the light version where you can just go full on Republican if you're a Republican, right? But I hear you talking and I hear you saying, look, let's make a decision to actually turn the page and be the party we're supposed to be. So I find that quite inspiring, I must say,
Absolutely. We gotta be the change we wish to see in the world. That's my favorite quote, and I'm serious about it in my daily walk. And so even within the party, we need to be the change we wish to see, not only internally within the party, but also in our community. And so if we are serious about hearing everybody's voice and valuing their opinion in our own lives, in our own household, then we need to be serious about that in our own party. And we haven't been. And that's why we missed the boat in the last election. We weren't listening to people. We weren't listening to Black women. We weren't listening to Muslim Americans. We weren't even listening to, um, you know, every Jewish American voice under the big tent, to be honest. And so I just think we got to do a better job. Yes, the process may take a little bit longer, but justice, the arc of justice is long. And if we're actually serious about being, social justice advocates and advocating for every voice, then we're going to be serious about including every voice. And so, I don't want to bore you with any of that talk,
No,
because you know that in me. I think this will sum it up for you, Josh, and I'm happy to know that you're going to be joining our slate and our team. I'm excited about that actually. But for you, I used to work for the Detroit NAACP. That's where I got the quote. They are the most cussed, the most fussed, the largest, the biggest, the baddest, the boldest chapter in the country. And Reverend Wendell Anthony used to always tell me whenever I would tell him, man, I think it's time for me to buy a house in West Bloomfield or Farmington or move to downriver, give me a bigger plot of land. He was like, man, what are you talking about? Detroit is the greatest city in the world. And if you are a hardcore Detroiter, you don't move, you just improve. And the same thing goes for hardcore Democrats. We don't move away from our party. We don't move away from our values. We really improve the internal parts of our party. If we're not being inclusive, guess what? We step up and lead and make sure that our party is doing what it's supposed to be, and that's standing on our values. That's what real Democrats do. We don't end up faking like we're Republicans or going to be. No, I can't do that. That's not who I am. I
I,
was born and raised in this party, and so I'm going to continue to be. And I'm not saying anything against you, Josh. I'm just saying that my philosophy has always been, don't move, just improve.
yeah, and I think Al, I think a lot of people would definitely like to hear this. That there has been the sentiment that the party has become the party of optical symbolism in the past 4 years at least, and especially within the Muslim community, by the way, even before the 2024 election, there was dissatisfaction within the Democratic Party simply because of how the community was being treated in terms of being given really uh, optical, performative roles within the infrastructure that had no actual decision-making, power-making abilities. You briefly also highlighted on the policies point, and a lot of community members are asking, well, how is the next leadership of the Michigan Democratic Party, potentially under Al Williams, going to benefit Muslim communities, Muslim candidates? What's your plan for supporting Muslim candidates, right? If we want the party to be a tent that represents everybody, I'm sure a lot of Muslims, they have historically ran under the umbrella of the Democratic Party, and a lot of them likely will continue to run under this umbrella. What is the plan of Al Williams and your vision for supporting these Muslim candidates and promoting them within the party infrastructure?
Recruit, train, and put them in place. I mean, I think that we got to have precinct delegates in every single precinct that includes Muslim Americans in Muslim communities and throughout the state. And so precinct delegates are the most local elected positions that you can be elected to. That's where you get started. College students, anybody that's just getting engaged in the process and really serious about making a difference, that's where we train them first. Down ballot candidates absolutely want to see better representation, not only in my community, for my community, but also for Muslim Americans in this state. It's absolutely essential that the representation is representative of how our communities look. Or else we continue to walk down this path of not getting things done for our communities. I mean, Republicans, they're homogenistic. They represent exactly what their party looks like and most of their communities look like. And they get things done for their community. And so in order to get things done as a party, and really be serious about real representation as a party, we got to be serious about investing in other communities outside of just working families or African Americans. Although those communities are important, we have the largest Arab American or Muslim American community outside of outside of the Middle East, in Dearborn, with business owners who are investing in this economy. And so I think it's absolutely essential, with families who are investing in this community, sending their children to schools in this community. And so I think it's absolutely essential that the Muslim American community has representation within the party, and then representation within their community. And so if they're leaning into the values of the Democratic Party, we're leaning in to support you locally and in every race, whether it's library commissioner, school board, all the way up to governor. I was in 2016. I can remember a Muslim American from Dearborn, big supporter of Gretchen's, as she was starting to campaign, big supporter of hers, was there for her every step of the way, campaigned for her. He was a precinct delegate and a business owner. I know him well. Showed up all the time, him and his wife, to support her. Showed up to rallies, was knocking on doors, getting people out to vote in Dearborn. Very, very, very active, organizing, bringing Arab Americans on board, was showing up to all the caucuses. And when he couldn't get the governor or the governor's team to respond to him during the presidential election, and when everything went down with the attack in Gaza, or in what was going on in Gaza, when he couldn't get her to respond, when he couldn't get her team to respond, when he couldn't get the party to respond, he started looking elsewhere because he didn't feel valued. No one was listening to him. And so that same individual, I know him personally, did not end up turning out for the Democratic Party because he did not feel valued after all the work he did to turn out the vote for the party. There was no value after they got elected towards him. And then we got to do a better job in making sure that we show that value.
And I think I'm going to let Dr. Annie and Joshua also share their opinions, but I think this party is at a big crossroads following the 2024 election, and it is my personal opinion that if the Democratic Party does not return to its roots and principles within the next two elections, it will likely cease to be a political force, a major political force in the United States. What do I mean by that? We've seen the party become the party of tokenization. We've seen the party bring people under the umbrella uh, through assimilation, but not integration. What a lot of communities, and in particular, I can speak here for the Muslim community, are looking for, they're looking for integration. There may be specific ideas, specific values, specific strategies that we may disagree with, right? But a genuine partnership and a genuine alliance is a respectful approach to those conversations and those ideas in a balanced fashion and in a constructive fashion where we can work together, right? Um, I think the Democratic Party sidelined its core voices. And if it wants to really reclaim those voices, then it has to listen to them. It cannot vilify them. It cannot scapegoat them for the failures of the leadership. And I want some of the other guests to also comment and share their opinions on this as well, because you're all
Yeah.
ingrained within particular communities and you know the pulse of your communities. So
I mean, I was just sitting here gathering my thoughts that, the Muslim population itself is a very heterogeneous community. There are Muslims in Detroit, Hamtramck area. If we are included and if we have a seat at the table, we also, there's so much overlap of our communities that we also look after the interests of our African American, neighbors and friends. We don't want to see injustice done to them. It's not just about our interests. I mean, people that live in the suburban communities, like their neighbors, Muslims, neighbors and friends to Jewish Americans, Jewish Michiganders. And, a lot of, the, there'll be overlap in interests and looking after what's good for the community in total. I mean, downriver, like Yemeni communities, like if Yemeni communities are included and prosper, guess what? Working class families downriver who are white, African American. I mean, we pull each other up, right? If Muslims have a seat at the table, we end up pulling all of Southeast Michigan up as well. Is my thinking, because we look after each other. I mean, I'm from Detroit. That's when we do activism, we stand up for each other, is how I see it, and how I keep abreast of topics. And so, I think it's a heterogeneous effort.
yeah, and I think values wise as well as action wise and even status or socioeconomic status wise, it's a
Yeah.
very landscape that we're dealing with. And the party genuinely needs to return to representing the values that unite people, not the values that create uh, confusion and disunity. And this is where the opponents of the Democratic Party thrive. And it most definitely cannot return to the scapegoating factor where the leadership continues to blame the people it's supposed to represent. That's what a political party does. That's what it's meant to do. It answers to its constituents, not the other way around. Al, I want to move a little bit past this point, and you briefly have highlighted some of your foreign policy stance. The Muslim community in Michigan is very passionate and deeply attached to foreign policy issues, and especially in light of the genocide in Gaza that has been taking place for the past year and a half. The Democratic Party, statewide and on the federal level, has done a horrible job representing those voices and giving even platforming those voices. We saw it on the election, on the campaign trail. We saw it at the DNC. We've seen it in our own internal conversations with party infrastructure, right? How will you advocate so that the next Michigan Democratic Party, the new and revamped Michigan Democratic Party, reflects these concerns, that they allow for people to express these concerns so that the party and the people can mutually benefit from the conversation?
Yeah, I mean, we've been a party of peace for a very long time. It's one of the values that we stood on during wartime. We've been a party against genocide for a very long time. We've been the party that has forced corporations to divest from different companies and from different countries over the years. We've been the party that has stood for good every single time. And we've gotten away from that. We've gotten into more corporate backing and more about our donations than we have been about our people. And so I'm going to put people first as a party chair. I'm going to put our voices first. It's not about donations. I think if we have, my philosophy is to have, the biggest party that we can make it with the most voices in it. And so I'm all about calling a spade a spade. If it's genocide, we'll call it genocide, and we'll advocate locally, statewide, and nationally, to make sure that 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 our allies and peers are recognizing for what it is for what it is as well. Um, that's first, and then secondly, we're going to advocate for peace. And then fighting to resist. You know, what I think is an atrocity, um, and that's the taking of and pillaging and colonizing of other people's property and land. And I think that's something that the other party is trying to do. And I think that our party needs to be vigilant and advocate, um, you know, for what's right on a regular basis. And so if that's about if we're advocating for unity, let's advocate for unity. If we're advocating for peace, let's advocate for peace. But if it is genocide, then let's call it what it is and make sure that we're not scapegoating resolutions that have been passed within our internal party by auxiliary parts of our party, counties, congressional districts, and clubs who have written resolutions to be passed and read and put on paper as something that our party presents. That needs to be done. We need to operate by our own bylaws and not try to skirt responsibility and silence voices. And that's what happened in 2024. And when it comes down to making sure that we're advocating for young people to be involved, it doesn't matter what race they're in. If they're advocating and engaged and talking about peace, why aren't we listening to them? If they're advocating and engaged and talking about supporting new leadership, why aren't we listening to them? They are the members of the future, the leaders of the future. The last thing we need to be doing is advocating for young people not to be involved, not to be engaged. Whatever they're talking about, if they're too loud and too aggressive, it's on us as adults to sit them down and show them how to do it responsibly, the right way. But shutting them down, arresting them, and getting rid of young people when they're only trying to be engaged and involved, I think that's the wrong approach. That's how you turn young people away from being involved in the party. And so that's I want to make sure that we discuss that. And then at the end of the day, I think we got to call a spade a spade. You know,
No, I
if
appreciate
it's
that.
genocide, then we call it genocide.
I appreciate the answer. Joshua, I don't know if you have any opinions to share. Annie, I don't know if you have any opinions to share on this bit as well.
I appreciate Al's sentiment. I think he hit the nail on the head. Where my mind is at is I'm looking forward to the idea of, let's say we're successful at the state level and have that change of leadership, okay, where we have the new mindset. Then the question is how do we then really, quote, affect real change as leaders? And as I was listening, I was thinking about three things. One, the down ballot initiatives that Al had started to talk about. The idea that government happens at a local level and there are all these positions that actually affect people's lives that are opening up. Then you have communities, Arab American communities, communities of different communities that actually want to have a voice. And then you look at for the third thing is over the past 15 years or a generation, how have the Republicans been able to create so much power? Yes, there is a lot on us as Democrats, but what they did is, even though they're homogenous, they took all those down ballot races, all those local positions, and made sure that people ran and filled them. Now, we have an opportunity. We have people that need a voice. We have local positions coming up. it's okay to copy the Republicans' playbook here. It is okay because it actually is a decent playbook. You take those open positions, precinct delegates, library boards, ad infinitum. You have people that align with our values, fill those positions, and over time, we can grow real strength from the grassroots up by being also good leaders and enabling them. So that's where my head was at. And that's on, even though it's on a local level, that then will affect what goes on from a national and international level. Andy, Rex, Al, do you agree with that statement?
Absolutely, it's not easy work, but you're absolutely right. And I talk about doing it on a precinct delegate level, a candidate level, fighting in every race from library commissioner all the way up to governor. Republicans started a school board. We need to do the same. I mean, there is even people that can run for drain commissioner. So, those are positions that end up being important in your community. The city clerk's positions. I mean, we need Democrats who lean into our values to be armor bearers of democracy by running for city clerk. That's not the only job that they do, but that is one of the most important jobs that they have as a clerk, whether it's county or municipal clerk. And so, yes, those positions are absolutely essential. Those are also the individuals that end up who are more apt to be able to mobilize in their community. And you can't win statewide if you're not fighting in every race. And that's why we
I'll,
lost in the past election.
I'd like to add one more thing. Rex, for your viewers and listeners, I think the idea is as you're listening to this podcast or this interview, what actually interests you? What area interests you? Because there is a public position where you who are listening today can get involved and then by ipso facto get your voice heard that way. So it's a win-win situation. And if anyone takes anything away from tonight, yes, it's getting to know the people on the panel, but realizing there's opportunities now coming up where all of us can get into position to have our voices heard. And I think that's an important concept. Rex, I hope you agree with that as the host.
Yeah, no, of course. I think the best way to generate grassroots power is through local engagement. We do not live in bubbles, and even as Muslims, it is a principle of our faith that we are most connected to God when we are helpful to people.
Mm.
Uh,
Yeah, all politics is local.
all politics is local, exactly. So I mean, I think this has been a very productive conversation. Al, I'm going to give you uh, another 2 minutes to kind of tell us why the Muslim community should trust Al Williams with the responsibility of leading the Democratic Party.
I'm one of you. 7 Mile, Illinois, really smart area. And I'm one of I understand the importance of inclusivity and equality. Number one, I understand what it feels like to have a foot on your neck, what it feels like not to be heard. I've been there. I was once a Michigan Young Dem that was recruiting young people into the party, and then our whole group of people were kicked out of the party because I believe we were just doing so well. But really, it was because a black man was elected chair of the Michigan Young Dems. And so I've been there before. As the next chair, I won't do that to others because it's been done to me. I won't silence voices because it's too important for those voices to be heard. I will advocate for all communities, and I'm gonna make sure that people have representation. Under this administration in Michigan, Black folk have lost representation. We used to have John Conyers. We used to have Brenda Lawrence. We used to have Black state senators, male and female. Now we don't even have a Black congressperson on the Democratic side. I don't even know if John James is Black for real, but we don't have a Black congressperson on the
You're naughty
Democratic
but
side.
funny. That was naughty but funny.
I, I know. It's just a cheerful side. But what I'm saying is representation is important, and Muslim Americans will know if they support me as the next chair, I will fight to make sure you have representation. I will fight to make sure that you keep representation. And I'm hoping that you will do the same for African Americans. and the Democratic Party as a whole. And so, and then last but not least, I've been excommunicated and sort of attacked for being anti-Semitic, just for trying to be inclusive, trying to help people understand that this is a party for all voices, not just one voice. And in doing that, I think that I'm hoping that the Arab American community will understand that I have always fought for the Arab American community, whether it's in politics and or business. My business partner is Arab American. And so I'm hoping that I can continue to have your support as you will continue to have mine. I'm hoping that you'll advocate to rebuild the party from the bottom up as I continue to rebuild the party from the bottom up with Arab Americans and the Arab American communities and Arab American Democrats in mind, not only as a symbolic voice, but as a powerful voice under the Big Tent. Thank you so much.
And then I'll let the panelists give comments, any follow-up questions if you may have any, please.
No, I was sitting here thinking that we, as immigrants, as blue collar folk, I mean, there's so many of us that are rest comfortably so on the achievements and hard work of African Americans in the past. And we, and going forward, I do feel like, Al, you get us, you get that we want to be included. And so I'm wishing you well in your campaign to be MDP chair. I think, there's hopefully a place at the table for us, and I think Democratic Party will be stronger for it. I think this is the way to save the party.
Absolutely. And yes, there's a place on our slate and our leadership team, our executive board, and within State Central for the Muslim American community. I want to make sure that we have at least 2 spots on our executive board. We're still talking about who. I don't want to choose who that is for you, for the Muslim American community. So it's a little bit of a process. But I want to make sure that there are voices, not just symbolic voices, but real voices on our executive board from the Muslim American community.
Joshua, thank you, Al. Joshua, any last comments from you?
I think you and Annie and Al have said everything that needs to be said. I think the biggest contribution I could say right now is it's been a really nice conversation, and there's a lot of work to do. We need to get to work. That's about it. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, everyone, to the folks who are going to be watching this. This was an interview or a segment, let's say, more so an organic conversation, really, not an interview, with Al Williams, who is a candidate for the Michigan Democratic Party chair. The convention is going to be on February 22nd. So if you're a Democratic Party member, please make sure that on Saturday you go and you exercise your right to vote within the Democratic Party infrastructure. From us, at Action, American Muslim TV, and the community spaces, we are here to keep the community informed, to keep the community continuously engaged, and to present to the community conversations, information, segments that are going to empower them and mobilize them so that we truly have an authentic Muslim voice representing us in the political space. Thank you so much, and we will see you at the next episode of The Muslim Take.
Thank you.